It's no coincidence that you've arrived here. In this exact moment, hearing these words, there's been a quiet hand guiding you, not the kind that shows up in headlines or in the noise of the world, but the kind that works in the background, like the tide shaping the shore, while no one is watching. You didn't come because you were chasing something new to fill a gap. You came because somewhere deep inside, a door has been ready to open for a long time. And today, it clicks open. Being chosen isn't about standing above others or collecting some golden badge from the universe. It's not about proving yourself worthy. It's about resonance. It's what happens when your inner frequency begins to hum in tune with possibilities you couldn't quite perceive before. Like turning a dial on an old radio, moving past static and distortion, and suddenly, clear as a bell, the station comes in, and you realize it was always there, quietly broadcasting, waiting for you to align. I know what it feels like to move through life tuned into stations of struggle and scarcity, stations that play the same tired chorus. Life is happening to you. You're just trying to keep up, but something in you, even if you couldn't name it, has been searching for a different sound. That subtle restlessness you've carried. It's been your spirit adjusting the dial, looking for the place where the song matches the rhythm of your soul. And right now, in this moment, you've found it. Here's the truth. Most people overlook this meeting between you and these words. Isn't the start of something. It's the recognition of something that has always been. The universe, or the quantum field if you prefer that language, has been entwined with you from the very beginning, not as two separate entities sending signals across the dark, but as one system, one field, expressing itself through you. When you shift inside, reality doesn't respond from the outside. It reorganizes from within, because you are the within. And when that shift happens, you don't have to force the world to bend. You don't have to strain or push against the current. Alignment is less like wrestling with the river and more like laying back into its flow, letting it carry you, not because you're passive, but because you finally remembered you and the river are made of the same water. So why are you here now? Because the signal you've been sending, the quiet refusal to settle for a life smaller than your vision, has reached the point where it's undeniable. Maybe you've faced seasons where nothing seemed to grow, where the ground felt frozen, and your dreams like seeds buried too deep to sprout. But those seasons weren't punishment. They were preparation. Roots grow in the dark. I've learned that life has its own seasons, and they don't always match the calendar. There's the springtime of the soul, where everything expands and possibilities bloom overnight. There's the summer, when the pace slows and you're asked to live the truths you've already discovered, to let them root in the soil of your days. Autumn brings the harvest, the visible results of your inner work, but also the falling away of what you no longer need. And yes, there's winter, when nothing seems to move. But winter is when the deepest transformation happens. Quietly, invisibly, under the surface. You see, being chosen doesn't mean constant sunshine. It means trusting the intelligence of the seasons in your own life. It means you can stop fighting the parts of your journey that feel still, or slow, or uncertain, and recognize them as the quiet work that makes the blooming possible. And when you live from that trust, the static clears. You begin to notice the subtle synchronicities, the right person appearing at the right moment, the door opening exactly when you were ready to walk through. The timing feels uncanny. But it's not magic in the way we've been taught to think of magic. It's coherence. It's the outer world reorganizing to match the frequency you've chosen to live from. So as you hear this, know that you're not standing at the beginning of a path. You're standing in the middle of a remembering. You've always been part of this field of infinite intelligence, and now you're simply seeing it clearly. The question is no longer, am I ready? Your very presence here answers that. The question is, will I live as though I am? Because when you choose to live as someone who's already aligned, already tuned in, you stop waiting for permission. You stop bargaining with your dreams. And you start becoming the living proof of the truth you've just remembered you were chosen. You are chosen, and you will always be chosen. And from this moment on, every step, every breath, every small act of trust will be a quiet signal back to the universe, saying, I'm here. I'm ready. Let's flow. 1. The seasons of consciousness. There's a rhythm to the inner life that no calendar can fully capture. I've lived long enough to see it in myself, in the people I've walked beside, and in the quiet, patient way life unfolds. It's like the garden my grandmother used to keep always changing. Never hurried, always right, on time, in its own way. Spring is that season when everything in you starts to stretch toward the light. Ideas sprout without asking permission. Hope rises without explanation. And even your body seems to move with more ease. This is when possibility feels abundant, and the air around you seems filled with invitations to begin. But here's what I've learned. Spring doesn't last forever, and it's not meant to. Summer comes, and with it, the heat of integration. This is when the thrill of beginning is replaced by the steady work of tending. In summer, you water what you planted. You pull the weeds. You keep showing up, even when the novelty has worn off. It's a slower rhythm, and for some, it feels like a letdown after the bright rush of spring. But summer is where depth is built. It's where the roots grow strong enough to hold you through what comes next. Autumn is the season of harvest. It's when you see, in the outer world, the results of the quiet inner work you've been doing for months, sometimes years. Relationships shift. Opportunities arrive. Healing that once felt impossible finally starts to feel natural. But autumn also asks you to let go. Just like the trees, you can't hold on to everything. Old habits, outgrown identities, familiar but limiting roles, they need to fall away so something new can take their place. And then there's winter. The stillness, the quiet. This is the season most people fear, because on the surface, nothing seems to be happening. But in truth, winter is where the deepest transformation occurs. Seeds rest in the dark soil, gathering the strength to break through when the time is right. In winter, your own soul does the same. You may feel stripped down, uncertain, even invisible, but beneath the surface, there's a quiet reweaving of who you are. I've been through many winters, and I can tell you this, they are not signs of failure. They are the breathing spaces between one chapter of growth and the next. They are the long, deep inhale before the exhale of new life. The trouble is, we live in a culture that worships perpetual spring and summer, constant productivity, endless beginnings, visible progress every moment of every day. But life doesn't work that way. And when we try to force ourselves to stay in one season, we suffer. We burn out in summer because we never learn to rest in winter. We get restless in spring because we haven't made peace with the quiet work of integration. Honoring the seasons of your consciousness is an act of trust. It means you stop asking, why am I not blooming right now? And start asking, what season am I in? And what is it asking of me? It means you give yourself permission to rest when the world says push harder, and permission to leap forward when the world says wait your turn. I used to fight my winters. I'd try to dig up seeds just to see if they were growing. I'd rush into projects I wasn't ready for because I feared being still. But stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the presence of preparation. It's the unseen gathering of everything you'll need when your spring comes again. When you learn to live this way, life feels less like a battle and more like a conversation with something wise and ancient. You begin to realize that every season, even the hard ones, is on your side. Every spring is sweeter when you've known a winter. Every harvest tastes richer when you've done the work of summer. And every season teaches you something you could not have learned in any other way. So, if you're in a spring right now, open your arms and welcome what's coming. If you're in summer, keep showing up. Keep tending. Trust the process. If you're in autumn, celebrate the harvest. And don't be afraid to let the leaves fall. And if you're in winter, rest. Breathe. Trust that what is unseen is not absent. Because the truth is, you are never outside the garden. You are always part of its rhythm, always moving in harmony with something far greater than you can see. And when you honor that, you stop trying to force the flowers to bloom, and you start becoming the kind of gardener who knows deep down that every season has its own kind of beauty, and everyone is essential. 2. You don't attract. You are reality. There was a time when I believed, like many do, that life was something I had to pull toward me, that my dreams, my peace, my sense of purpose were all out there somewhere, waiting to be lured in like a shy animal. I thought, if I thought the right thoughts, spoke the right affirmations, or visualized with enough intensity, I could convince life to give me what I wanted. It was an exhausting way to live, and it kept me trapped in the same loop, always reaching, always hoping, never quite arriving. It took me years, and more than a few seasons of loss and stillness, to understand a truth that changed everything. I'm not here to attract reality. I am reality, and so are you. It's a strange idea at first. I know. We've been taught to see ourselves as separate, a small me, navigating a vast, indifferent world. But if you've ever sat quietly enough to feel the space between your breaths, you know there's something deeper, something indivisible. Every moment of awareness is like a quantum measurement, an instant where infinite possibilities exist, but one crystallizes into form. And here's the part most people miss. You're not standing outside that process, watching it happen. You're the very consciousness that selects which possibility becomes real through the lens of your perception. Imagine the ocean. Each wave has its own shape, its own journey to the shore. But the wave doesn't have to attract the sea, it is the sea. And because it is the sea, every movement it makes is part of the whole. You are like that. Every thought, feeling, and choice is not a request to an external universe. It is the movement of the universe through you. When you understand this, the game changes. There's no need to convince life to cooperate. There's no need to send desperate signals into the void, hoping something or someone will hear you. The field of possibility isn't out there waiting for your call, it's woven into your very being. You're not pulling experiences toward you. You're letting them emerge from within you. Like flowers opening in a garden, you've been tending all along. This is why forcing things never really works. When we push too hard, when we try to make something happen by sheer willpower, it's often because we're still clinging to the illusion that life is separate from us, that we must close some imagined distance. But there is no distance. You can't chase what you already are. And ironically, the more you try to grasp at it, the more it slips away. Not because it's denying you, but because your grasping blinds you to the fact that it's already here. There's a gentler way. It begins with allowing, with softening your grip on how things should look or when they should happen. It's about becoming so rooted in the knowing of who you are that you no longer measure your worth by what you can draw in from the outside. You start to live from a place of wholeness rather than hunger. And from that place, the reality seems to reshape itself around you, but really, you're simply becoming aware of the shapes it was already holding. I remember a winter in my life when everything felt bare. A job had ended unexpectedly, relationships had shifted, and I found myself waking up each day with the heavy sense that I had nothing to offer. My old way of thinking told me I had to manifest something quickly to prove my life still had meaning. But each attempt to force an outcome left me more drained. One cold morning, I stopped trying. I sat by the window, watching frost melt on the glass, and something softened in me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for my life to arrive. I felt here, present, whole, even without answers. And in that stillness, things began to move: opportunities, conversations, insights, all flowing naturally, without the strain I had once believed was necessary. That's the quiet paradox. When you stop trying to attract, you begin to experience the fullness of what's already present. You realize you are not a separate traveler navigating through a foreign world. You are the terrain itself, the sky above it, and the eyes taking it all in. Life isn't happening to you or for you. It's happening through you, as you. So when you feel the urge to chase, to pull, to demand, pause. Remember that every moment of awareness is a choice point, and your presence is the brush painting the picture of your life. You don't need to beg the canvas for colors. You are the source from which the colors come. This isn't about becoming passive or doing nothing. It's about acting from the deep recognition that you are already in relationship with everything that exists. Your actions are not about attracting something missing. They are about expressing something true. And the more aligned you are with that truth, the more your lived experience reflects it back to you. You are not here to endlessly adjust the sails to catch some elusive wind. You are the wind, the sea, and the sail itself. And once you realize that, you stop asking, when will it come, and start living the answer that has always been here. It's already me. 3. Living as someone who has already been chosen. There's a quiet dignity in living as though you have already been chosen. Not the kind of choice that comes with fanfare or public recognition, but the kind that settles deep in your bones, a steady knowing that you belong here, in this life, exactly as you are. It's not about arrogance or superiority. It's about finally letting go of the gnawing belief that you have to fight, prove, or earn your place. For much of my life, I lived in that old version of myself, the one who measured worth by how much I could endure, achieve, or produce. I thought, if I kept striving, if I collected enough accomplishments, if I endured enough hardship, then maybe I'd have the right to stand tall. But that way of living felt like carrying a heavy bag everywhere I went, filled with the weight of proving myself. Even in moments of success, the bag never got lighter. Living as someone who has been chosen means setting that bag down. It means no longer structuring your days around earning the love, respect, or approval you believe you lack. It means moving from a place inside you that has never been in doubt about your worth, even when your mind or the world tries to convince you otherwise. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a shift that begins quietly, often in the spaces where no one is watching. It starts when you notice the small ways you're still trying to negotiate with life, when you say yes out of fear of missing out, when you work yourself to exhaustion to be seen as valuable, when you hold your tongue because you don't want to upset the fragile balance of someone else's comfort. To live as chosen is to slowly, deliberately release those patterns. It's to answer a different question each morning, not, what must I do to be worthy, but, how will I express the truth of my worth today? Sometimes that expression is bold, a decision that breaks an old cycle. Other times it's quiet, choosing rest over constant movement, saying no when your heart says no, speaking your truth, even if your voice trembles. There's a subtle power in this way of living. When you stop trying to prove yourself, you start conserving your energy for what actually matters. You move from reaction to creation. You stop chasing moments of validation and start creating moments of meaning. And strangely, it's often in this space, when you're no longer reaching outward for approval, that the world begins to respond differently. Opportunities come not because you're desperately trying to pull them in, but because your very being radiates alignment. I think of it like a tree. A tree doesn't grow taller by straining toward the sky. It grows by being rooted deeply where it stands, trusting that the sun will find it, the rain will nourish it, and the seasons will shape it. The tree doesn't compare itself to the forest around it. It doesn't panic in winter or rush in spring. It simply continues to live its treeness fully, and in doing so, it fulfills the reason it's here. Living as chosen is much the same. It's about rooting yourself in the truth of who you are, and letting life flow from there. It doesn't mean you'll never face hardship. Storms still come to the tree, but it means the storms no longer define your value. You stop seeing challenges as evidence that you're unworthy, and start seeing them as part of the growth that a chosen life naturally brings. I know the temptation to slip back into the old way. The old version of me still whispers sometimes, do more, be more, prove them wrong. But now I can smile at that voice. I can thank it for the way it tried to protect me and still choose differently. Choosing to live as chosen is choosing to trust. Trust that you don't have to perform for your place in the world. Trust that you can act from fullness instead of from lack. And perhaps most importantly, living as chosen changes how you move through the world. You stop trying to fit yourself into spaces where you have to shrink to belong. You stop negotiating with your dreams, telling them they'll have to wait until you're ready. You stop living like life is something to be earned and start living like it's something to be expressed. When you live this way, people can feel it. They may not be able to name it, but they sense the difference. It's in the way you carry yourself, not with bravado, but with ease. It's in the way you speak, not to persuade, but to connect. It's in the way you listen, not waiting for your turn to talk, but hearing with the presence of someone who knows they already belong. If there's one thing I want you to know, it's this. You don't have to wait for an invitation to be the fullest expression of yourself. The invitation was given the moment you took your first breath, and every day since. The only thing life has been waiting for is for you to realize it. So here, now, you have a choice. You can keep living as if you still need to be selected, still need to cross some invisible threshold before you're allowed to take up space. Or you can live as though the threshold is already behind you, because it is. You can step fully into the reality that your worth was never in question. Your presence was never an accident, and your life is already proof that you were chosen. And from that place, from that deep, quiet knowing, every action you take will carry a different weight. Not the heaviness of proving, but the lightness of expressing. Not the strain of earning, but the ease of being. And when you live in that way, you'll find that the life you once thought you had to chase is the life that naturally flows through you. 4. Challenges as doorways. There was a time when I saw every challenge as a wall, solid, cold, immovable. It felt like life was constantly testing me, throwing up barriers just to see if I could find a way over or around them. I would meet each one with resistance, teeth clenched, determined to break through by sheer force. Sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I didn't, but almost always I came away exhausted, worn thin, and quietly resentful that life seemed so determined to stand in my way. It took me years of being humbled, of being broken open to realize that these so-called walls weren't walls at all. They were doors. Some of them were heavy and hard to see, disguised by the very pain they brought. But each one, without exception, was an invitation into a part of myself I hadn't yet lived fully. When you're in the middle of a challenge, it rarely feels like a gift. The grief of loss, the uncertainty of change, the raw ache of disappointment, these moments can feel like the ground has been pulled out from under you. Your instinct is to brace against them, to try and get back to normal as quickly as possible. But here's what I've learned. Normal is often just the familiar version of yourself you've outgrown. Challenges come, not to strip you of who you are, but to strip away who you are not. They take from you the illusions, the false securities, the parts of you that may have been comfortable, but were quietly keeping you small. They pull you into rooms you didn't know existed, rooms where you meet courage you didn't think you had, strength you didn't know was possible, compassion you couldn't have touched without first knowing your own pain. I think of a time in my life when everything seemed to unravel at once. A relationship I had poured my heart into ended abruptly. A project I'd built over years collapsed almost overnight. My health, which I had always taken for granted, began to falter. It felt like the lights went out in every room at the same time. For a while, I sat in that darkness, convinced that I had lost my way entirely. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to realize something. There was a faint light under the door. At first, I didn't have the energy to reach for it, but little by little, I began to lean toward it. And when I finally opened that door, I stepped into a version of myself I'd never known. I was more resilient. Yes, but also softer. I could hold my own pain without turning bitter. I could hold the pain of others without rushing to fix it. I learned to trust the slow unfolding of life in a way I never could have when things were easy. That's the thing about challenges. They demand that you stop living only from the surface. They pull you deeper, down to the bedrock of who you are. And when you meet them with openness instead of resistance, you discover that they are less like tests you have to pass, and more like doorways into a larger life. When you see them this way, you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to open in me?" That single shift changes everything. You stop running from difficulty as if it's a predator, and you start walking toward it with curiosity, knowing that on the other side there is something you've been ready for. Even if you didn't know it, it doesn't mean you'll start welcoming every hardship with a smile. You're still human, and pain still hurts. But you begin to hold it differently. Instead of letting it close you down, you allow it to shape you into someone more whole. Instead of letting it convince you that life is against you, you let it show you the ways life is. In fact, for you, even when it's uncomfortable, challenges have a way of revealing the invisible architecture of your life. They show you which foundations are strong and which ones need rebuilding. They bring into focus the relationships, beliefs, and habits that either nourish your growth or quietly undermine it. And as you walk through these doorways, you start to realize that the person you're becoming on the other side is not someone you could have become without having walked through. There's a line I've carried with me for years. The wound is the place where the light enters you. It's not just a poetic sentiment, it's a lived truth. The light that enters through our wounds doesn't just illuminate the brokenness, it illuminates the strength, the beauty, and the truth that have been there all along. So, when the next challenge comes, and it will remember this, you're not being punished. And you're not being abandoned. You're being invited. You're being called into a part of yourself that's been waiting for you. The doorway may be narrow, and the passage may be uncomfortable, but the space on the other side is wide and full of air you didn't know you needed. And when you walk through enough of these doors, you begin to trust them. You stop fearing the sound of the hinges. You know that every threshold, no matter how daunting, is leading you somewhere you are meant to go. And you start to live with the quiet, steady courage of someone who knows the very things you once thought were there to break you were the things that opened you. 5. The gardener and the garden life, as I've come to know it, is a living garden, not a garden you stand apart from, tending with gloves on and tools in hand, but a garden you are woven into root and branch, soil and sky. You are both the one who plants and the one who grows. You are the hands that scatter the seeds, the soil that holds them, the rain that nourishes them, and the sunlight that draws them toward their becoming. It took me many years to see it this way. For a long time, I thought life was something that simply happened to me, seasons of luck or misfortune rolling through without warning. As though I were just a visitor wandering through someone else's plot of land. I didn't see how deeply connected I was to the very ground I was walking on. But the truth is, every single thing that blooms or withers in my life is connected to a seed I have planted, whether consciously or unconsciously. In the soil of my own being, these seeds are our intentions, our thoughts, our small daily choices, Some are planted deliberately with love, with clarity, with the care of a gardener who knows exactly what will flourish in this space. Others are dropped absent-mindedly, scattered in moments of fear, anger, or neglect. The garden doesn't judge which seeds you plant. It simply receives them, holds them, and brings them to life when the season is right. I think back to a time in my life when I was planting seeds without even realizing it. Every day, I told myself I wasn't ready. I wasn't good enough. I compared myself to others and let that comparison sink into my heart like a quiet poison. Those thoughts were seeds too. And in time, they grew into a thicket of hesitation and self-doubt, so thick that I could barely see the possibilities beyond it. It was only when I began to pay attention to really notice the words I was speaking to myself, the energy I was carrying into my days, that I realized the garden was listening. The soil was fertile. It would grow anything I placed into it. The choice was mine. I could keep planting weeds, or I could plant something I actually wanted to see blossom. Being both the gardener and the garden is a sacred responsibility. It means you can't simply blame the weather when things don't turn out the way you hoped. Yes, storms will come. Yes, there will be seasons of drought and cold. But the heart of the garden, your inner landscape, responds most deeply to what you choose to nurture. Even in the harshest seasons, there's always a seed waiting for your care. Always a small green shoot that will answer if you tend to it. And here's the part that brings me the most. Peace. The garden doesn't rush. It doesn't demand instant results. A seed planted in spring might not bloom until the following summer, or even years later. Some seeds take a long time to break open. Their roots may grow deep and unseen for months before anything emerges above the surface. And yet, in every moment, something is happening. The life you've been cultivating is always moving, even when you can't see it. I've learned to walk my own garden with gentleness. Some mornings, I look around and see beauty, bright flowers of love, abundance, and connection that I once only dreamed about. Other mornings, I notice the weeds, habits, and thoughts that crept in when I wasn't paying attention. But I don't rip them out with anger anymore. I remind myself, even the weeds are part of the story. They show me where I need to be more present, more intentional. They remind me that the act of gardening is never finished. And perhaps the most humbling lesson is this: you are not gardening alone. The same intelligence that turns a seed into a tree is the intelligence that moves through you. The sun doesn't ask the seed for a timetable. The rain doesn't question if the soil is worthy of nourishment. Life simply supports life. And when you align yourself with that rhythm, when you trust the process, you stop forcing and start allowing. You begin to understand that the blooms are not the only reward. The quiet moments of tending, of kneeling in the dirt of your own becoming, are just as sacred. The simple act of choosing what to plant again and again, day after day, is how the garden becomes what it is meant to be. So, as you stand in your own garden today, ask yourself, what seeds am I planting? Are they rooted in love, in trust, in a vision that expands me? Or are they born of fear, doubt, and old stories that no longer fit? Remember, the garden will grow what you give it. And whether or not you remember planting those seeds, they will bloom in time. And when they do, when the blossoms open and the air fills with the fragrance of what you've nurtured, you will realize something simple but profound. The gardener and the garden have never been separate. You have been both all along. And every flower, every leaf, every green and living thing has been an expression of the same truth, that life is not happening outside of you. Life is growing through you. 6. The breath of intuition. There's a rhythm to intuition that feels a lot like breathing, quiet, steady, essential. It's not the rush of adrenaline we sometimes mistake for gut instinct, nor is it the loud voice of fear dressed up as caution. True intuition is gentler than that. It arrives like a whisper that somehow feels older than you are. as if it's been traveling toward you from a place far ahead on your path. I've come to understand intuition as the voice of the future you've already chosen, calling back to you through the corridors of time. Not a future imposed upon you by fate, but one that lives in the deepest alignment with who you really are. Each time you listen to it, each time you follow it even when logic argues otherwise, you shorten the distance between the life you're living now and the life you've been moving toward all along. In my own life, there have been moments when intuition spoke so softly, I almost missed it. I remember once being offered an opportunity that, on paper, looked perfect. Everyone around me said I would be a fool to turn it down. The money was good, the role impressive, but every time I pictured myself in it, something inside me grew heavy. It wasn't fear, it was a quiet no that pulsed in my chest. It made no sense to my mind, but my body understood. I declined the offer, and months later, I saw how saying no had cleared space for something that fit me in a way I didn't yet have the words for. That's the thing about intuition. It rarely lays out the entire map. It just hands you the next step, like a lantern, lighting a small circle of ground ahead. Following it requires a kind of faith that doesn't come from knowing the outcome, but from trusting the part of you that sees beyond the limits of your current vision. We live in a world that prizes analysis, that demands proof before action. We're taught to list pros and cons, to compare, to calculate risk. And while reason has its place, it's not designed to access the deeper intelligence that intuition carries. Logic looks at what is. Intuition listens for what's becoming. Logic works with the known. Intuition moves in the realm of what has yet to emerge. The more I've listened to my intuition, the more I've realized it has its own language. Sometimes it comes as a feeling in the body, a lightness that says yes, a heaviness that says no. Sometimes it's a sudden clarity that cuts through confusion, or a quiet nudge that won't let go until you pay attention. And sometimes it feels like a breath you didn't know you were holding, finally releasing. But listening is only half the practice. The other half is making space for that voice to be heard in the first place. In a life crammed with noise, constant notifications, endless opinions, the hum of our own anxious thoughts, it's easy for intuition to be drowned out. That's why stillness matters. Moments when you step away from the noise, even for a few minutes, are moments when the quiet truths can rise to the surface. I think of intuition as the tide beneath the surface of our days. You can ignore it and try to swim against it, but eventually you'll feel the drag in your muscles, the exhaustion of fighting what's meant to carry you. Or you can let it hold you, let it guide your strokes, trusting that it knows the way to shore, even when you can't yet see it. And here's what I've learned through experience. The more you honor your intuition in the small things, the more clearly you'll hear it in the big ones. Choosing to rest when you're tired instead of pushing through. Reaching out to someone who suddenly comes to mind. Taking the longer route home because something in you says, "Not that way today." These may seem like tiny, inconsequential acts, but each one is a muscle you're strengthening. Each one is a way of saying to yourself, "I trust you." Of course, listening doesn't mean life will always unfold without challenges. Sometimes following your intuition will lead you into uncertainty, into choices that others don't understand. But I've found that even in those moments, there's a kind of peace that comes from knowing you didn't betray yourself to make someone else comfortable. You followed the thread that felt true, and that's a win, no matter how the details turn out. Intuition is patient, but it's also persistent. If you ignore it long enough, it doesn't punish you, it simply waits, like a door left ajar. And when you're ready to listen, it's there, ready to guide you again. So if you find yourself at a crossroads right now between staying where you are and stepping into the unknown, pause, breathe. Ask yourself not what's safest, not what makes the most sense on paper, but what feels like an honest yes in your body, in your chest. In that quiet place, you can't quite name. That's your future self speaking. That's the breath of intuition, carrying the scent of a life that already belongs to you. And when you choose to follow it, you'll notice something miraculous. The gap between who you are and who you're becoming begins to close. Step by step, breath by breath, you'll find yourself living in the very life you once thought was far away. Not because you forced it into being, but because you allowed yourself to be carried by the tide that was yours all along. 7. You and the quantum field are one. For much of my life, I thought of the universe as something out there, a vast, mysterious expanse that I might be able to influence if I prayed hard enough, worked hard enough, or somehow sent the right signals into the void. I imagined it like a distant radio tower, and me, with my little transmitter, trying to get a message through the static. But over the years, especially in the quiet seasons of my life, the winters, when everything I'd been relying on seemed to fall away, I began to notice something. The changes I longed for didn't arrive because I sent the perfect signal out into the world. They arrived when something inside me shifted so deeply that it changed the way I moved, saw, and felt in the everyday moments of my life. It was then I understood the universe is not a separate receiver of my signal. I am the field itself, reorganizing from within. This is what I mean when I say you and the quantum field are one. There is no real boundary between what you think of as you and what you think of as everything else. We only believe there is because we've been taught to live as if we're separate. We've been conditioned to see ourselves as small dots floating in an endless sky, hoping the stars will align in our favor. But the truth is far more intimate and far more empowering. The stars are not just above you, they are in you. The very space between those stars, the unseen web that connects them, is the same fabric that threads through your being. You are not asking it to change you, are it? Changing. Think of it this way. When you rearrange a room, you don't send a request to the furniture asking it to move. You move it because you are the one holding the power to shape the space. In the same way, when you change your inner state, not just your passing thoughts, but the deeper tone of your being, you aren't sending a hopeful request to the universe. You are rearranging the space from which reality takes form. I've seen this in my own life, in ways that felt almost eerie, though now I understand they were simply natural. When I've made real, embodied changes inside, letting go of a resentment I'd carried for years, opening my heart to trust after betrayal, allowing myself to feel worthy without conditions, my outer world shifted without me forcing it. People responded differently. Opportunities appeared that I hadn't been chasing will. Paths cleared that had been blocked for years. At first, I thought these were coincidences. But the more I paid attention, the more I saw the pattern. Life was not rearranging itself for me, as if I were separate. Life was rearranging itself through me, because I am part of the very fabric it is made from. When you see yourself this way, you stop thinking in terms of trying to manifest something by convincing an external universe to give it to you. You realize manifestation is simply allowing what's already possible in the field to become visible in your experience, by aligning your inner state with it so fully that there's no contradiction left. The field responds instantly because it is not responding in the sense of receiving a message and sending something back. It is reorganizing as you. In the same moment you shift, like a mirror that changes the reflection the moment you move. The field shows you in form what you are holding in your being. This isn't about pretending or forcing yourself to feel something you don't. The quantum field isn't swayed by false signals. It moves with coherence when your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions are all in harmony. That's why deep inner work matters. Not because it earns you points with the universe, but because it clears the static inside you that keeps you from experiencing what's already here. And here's something I've learned the tender way. You don't have to be perfect to be in alignment. You don't have to resolve every fear, heal every wound, or have every answer before life begins to reflect your deeper truth. You just have to be willing to shift genuinely, even in small ways, into the state that matches the possibilities you're ready to live. When you remember that you are the field, impatience softens. You realize there's no waiting for something outside yourself to decide you're ready. The readiness happens in you, and the moment it does, the arrangement of reality changes to match it. Sometimes the change is subtle at first, like a faint shift in the wind. Sometimes it's dramatic, like the sky clearing after a long storm. But in both cases, it's coming from the same place, from you, from the field, from the oneness that never stopped being whole. So the next time you catch yourself sending out a silent plea asking for a break, a sign, a way forward, pause. Instead of thinking about what you want to receive, ask yourself, what would the version of me who already lives that reality feel like? Believe, and choose right now. Then, let yourself inhabit that state. Let it fill your breath, your voice, your smallest actions. Because in that moment, you're not sending a signal into the quantum field. You're moving as the quantum field. You're shaping the space from within. And when you do that, the gap between what you long for and what you live begins to dissolve, not because something outside has granted your wish, but because you and the wish were never separate. 8. Stepping into the eternal now. There comes a moment, if you live long enough and pay close enough attention, when time stops feeling like a straight line. You realize the past isn't a place left behind. The present isn't a fleeting point between what was and what will be. And the future isn't something waiting far ahead for you to arrive. Instead, you begin to sense that they all exist together, woven into one vast, living fabric. I didn't come to this understanding through books or theories, though I had read plenty of both. It came in the quiet, in the still spaces between breaths, when life had slowed me down enough to notice what was always here. In those moments, it felt less like I was moving through time, and more like time was moving through me. When your consciousness expands, this becomes clearer. The past, present, and future are not truly separate. They are perspectives, different ways of experiencing the same unbroken field of existence. And in that field, every possibility already exists, not as a distant someday, but as a living reality you can align with now. Think of it like tuning a radio. All the stations are broadcasting at once, but you only hear the one you're tuned to. The future you long for is like a frequency already playing. You don't have to wait for it to start. You simply have to find the place in yourself that resonates with it. And when you do, you step into it, not by traveling across years, but by meeting it here. In this breath, I've experienced this in ways I couldn't have explained before I understood it. There were times in my life when I made a choice, not a huge, dramatic leap, but a small, quiet shift inside. I decided to see myself differently, to speak differently, to walk through the world as though something I deeply desired had already taken root. And then, as if the world had been waiting for that moment, the people, opportunities, and experiences that matched that inner state began to appear. It's not magic, it's coherence. It's the alignment of your inner being with a reality that already exists in the eternal now. When you shift into that state, you don't have to chase the future. It meets you where you are. But here's the challenge: we are so conditioned to see time as a series of steps, as a ladder we climb one rung at a time. We think, once I have this, then I can feel that. Once I find love, then I'll feel worthy. Once I have money, then I'll feel secure. Once I'm healed, then I'll feel whole. The eternal now flips that order completely. It says, feel it now, live it now, and the outer world will reflect it. This is not about pretending or forcing yourself into a feeling that isn't real. It's about finding the threads of that future feeling that already live in you. and letting them grow stronger. If the future you imagine is peaceful, where can you cultivate peace now? Even in small ways. If it's joyful, where can you choose joy now? Even if nothing external has changed. One of the most profound shifts for me was realizing that the future I wanted wasn't about specific events or milestones. It was about the state of being. I thought those things would bring me. When I began to embody that state without waiting for the outer proof, I found myself naturally gravitating toward choices, people, and experiences that matched it. And in time, to the future I had once been striving toward, became my lived reality. The eternal now is not a place you visit once and leave behind. It's a way of living, a way of perceiving. It means you carry the awareness that all your timelines are connected, and you can step into any of them by the way you choose to think, feel, and act in this moment. It's the understanding that you're not separate from the future you dream of. It's simply another expression of you, calling you toward itself. Sometimes, stepping into the eternal now means letting go of the idea that you have to earn your way there. It means releasing the belief that there is some checklist to complete before you're ready. Readiness is a state, not a milestone. And the moment you enter it, you begin to see the world through different eyes. The eyes of someone who knows that the future is not a destination, but a choice you make over and over, right here. So if there's a vision you hold for yourself, I don't wait for the calendar to catch up. Meet it now. Sit with it. Breathe into it. Let it live in your words and gestures. Walk through your day as if you've already become that version of yourself, not to fake it, but to remember it into being. Because in the eternal now, you don't move toward the future. You allow the future to unfold from within you. And once you've felt that, once you've truly experienced that every moment is a doorway, you'll never see time the same way again. 9. Choice and destiny. For much of my life, I thought choice and destiny were enemies. One meant freedom, the other meant something fixed, beyond my control. I believed that if destiny were real, my choices didn't matter. And if my choices mattered, then destiny must be an illusion. It took years of living, of losing, of being humbled by both my own decisions and the mysteries I could never explain, for me to see that the two aren't in conflict at all. In truth, they are partners. The way I've come to understand it is this: your soul sets the frame for your life before you take your first breath. That frame is made up of the larger themes and lessons you came here to experience, the qualities you came to grow into, the gifts you came to offer. Within that frame, there's an expanse of blank canvas, wide, open, waiting, and on that canvas, you have infinite freedom to paint your picture. The frame is destiny, the painting is choice. Think of it like the outline of a mountain range. The peaks and valleys are set. They're part of the landscape you came to explore. But the path you take through them is entirely yours. You can choose to climb steep trails or wander gentle slopes, to stop often and rest, or to push yourself further than you imagined possible. You can linger in the valleys or race to the peaks. Every turn you take changes the view, but you are still within the mountains your soul chose for you. This understanding has been a relief for me. It means my choices are powerful. They shape my lived experience, my joy, my connections, my growth. But it also means I'm not adrift in a chaotic, meaningless universe. There's a deeper intelligence guiding the broad strokes of my journey, even when I can't see it. There have been moments in my life when I tried to push far outside that frame, times when I ignored every nudge, every inner knowing, and chased a path that looked good to my mind, but felt hollow in my heart. I could force my feet to walk it for a while, but eventually, something would happen. A sudden ending, an unexpected detour that brought me back toward what I was truly here for. In those moments, it didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder, turning me back toward home. And there have been other times when life seemed to drop something into my path that I could never have planned for. A meeting, a conversation, a moment of clarity that changed everything. These experiences felt like the hand of destiny moving, not overriding my will, but weaving my choices into a pattern I couldn't yet see. Living with this awareness is a dance. You don't wait passively for destiny to deliver your life to you, nor do you strain to control every detail, as if everything depends on your next move. Instead, you listen, you participate, you recognize that every choice you make is a brushstroke, and even the ones you might later wish to paint over add texture and depth to the whole. It also changes how you meet regret, when you know that nothing you've lived is outside the frame your soul chose. It's easier to forgive yourself. The choices you made, whether wise or misguided, were all part of exploring the terrain you came here to walk. You may have taken the long way around, but the long way often holds the richest lessons. I think of it like weaving a tapestry. The warp threads the strong. Vertical lines are destiny. They hold the shape, the structure. The weft threads the ones you move back and forth. Choosing colors and patterns are your choices. Without the warp, there's nothing to weave into. Without the weft, the warp is bare and incomplete. Only together do they create something whole. This view also brings a certain peace to uncertainty. When you're faced with a decision and the path ahead is unclear, you can remember, whatever I choose, I'm still within the frame. If I listen closely to my inner knowing and move from a place of truth, I'll bring beauty and meaning to the canvas. If I choose something that turns out to be difficult, that too will add depth to the picture. Nothing is wasted. Destiny, as I've come to feel it, isn't a fixed script you're forced to follow. It's more like the heartbeat of your life, the steady rhythm that keeps you moving in the direction your soul intended. Choice is the way you dance to that rhythm. Sometimes the steps are light and joyful. Sometimes they're slow and heavy. But the dance is always yours. So when you think about your own life, about the moments behind you, and the ones still ahead, remember this: you're not at the mercy of fate, nor are you solely the master of it. You are a co-creator with something vast and loving. Your soul gave you a frame, but your hands hold the brush. And every time you make a choice from the deepest part of yourself, the part that knows, without doubt, what feels like truth, you are painting a life that is uniquely yours. A life that, when seen from a higher view, will show a picture so intricate and beautiful. It could only have been created by the one who is both guided by destiny and gifted with the freedom to choose. 10. The unified field of love. There comes a quiet point in the journey when you begin to see people differently. It doesn't happen all at once. It's more like waking slowly in the morning light. At first, you still notice the surface, details, the personalities, the habits, the histories that make each person appear separate. But then, almost imperceptibly, you start feeling something deeper, as if an unseen current runs beneath it all, connecting everyone you meet. That current is what I call the unified field of love. It's not sentimental or naive. It's not about liking everyone's behavior or excusing harm. It's about recognizing that every person, no matter how lost or guarded, is a different facet of the same consciousness you are. When that truth begins to live in you, something shifts. You stop approaching others like pieces in a game, to be won or lost. There's no more tally of what they've done for you or what you've given them. Instead, the meeting itself becomes the gift. You begin to value presence over performance, connection over transaction. It changes even the smallest interactions. The stranger who holds the door open for you is not just a stranger. They are a mirror showing you the ease of giving. The driver who cuts you off in traffic is not just an obstacle. They are an unpolished reflection of urgency you, too, have felt. The friend who listens without judgment is not merely kind. They are the embodiment of the space you've been learning to hold for yourself. When you see this way, you stop chasing perfection in others. You stop demanding that they be a certain way before you can open your heart. You begin to realize that every meeting is purposeful, not because it will always be pleasant, but because it will always reveal something. Sometimes it's a reflection of your own growth. Sometimes it's a part of you you've hidden or denied. And sometimes it's simply the reminder that there's more to a person than what they're showing in this moment. This is where the field of love teaches you about boundaries. Many think love means letting everyone in without question. But the unified field shows otherwise. When you recognize the same consciousness in another, you also recognize the shared responsibility to honor both your well-being and theirs. You can step back without closing your heart. You can walk away from harmful dynamics while still holding the deeper truth. We are not separate. I've had moments when this was tested. Moments when someone's words or actions could have pulled me into resentment or self-protection. In the past, I would have stayed in that place for weeks, maybe months, rehearsing my side of the story in my mind. But now, I try to remember, this person is not other. They are a part of the same ocean, moving in a different current right now. I can acknowledge the waves without forgetting the water. The field of love also teaches patience. Some people you meet will be carrying so much pain that they cannot meet you from this shared awareness. They may misinterpret your intentions, close themselves off, or even lash out. It can be tempting to see that as a rejection of you, but more often, it's a reflection of the walls they've had to build to survive. And in those moments, the most loving thing you can do is to keep your heart steady, neither forcing connection nor collapsing into hurt. I think of it like tending a garden you didn't plant. You walk among rows of plants, some blooming, some still sprouting, some tangled with weeds. You don't yell at a bud for not being a flower yet. You simply keep walking, watering where you can, giving space where needed, trusting that the same life force runs through every stem. The unified field of love is not a theory to believe. It's a way of living that grows stronger the more you embody it. And the more you live from it, the more you notice how your presence changes the room you're in. You might not say the perfect words or solve anyone's problems, but people feel something, a steadiness, a kindness that invites them to lower their guard. They might not even understand why, but for a moment, they rest. And here's the paradox: when you live from this awareness, you give without keeping score. Yet life has a way of circling that love back to you. Not always from the same people, not always in the same form, but in a way that reminds you this field is alive, responsive, and whole. Eventually, you begin to sense that every encounter, whether fleeting or long-term, is like two ripples meeting on the surface of a lake. The shapes they make together are temporary, but the water they move in is eternal. You don't need to cling to the ripple. You can trust the water to bring more, to carry you both forward, to dissolve whatever no longer serves. And so, you meet people not with suspicion, not with demand, but with a quiet readiness. You show up not to extract something from them, but to see what this moment, in this field, is offering both of you. Sometimes it's joy. Sometimes it's challenge. Always, it's a chance to remember beneath all names and faces, all histories and differences, we are the same light moving through different shapes. When you live from that knowing, love stops being something you give or receive. It becomes the ground you walk on, the air you breathe, the field you recognize in every pair of eyes. And that recognition is its own kind of homecoming. 11. The power of synchronicity. There is a quiet power that begins to unfold when you live in harmony with yourself, a power that doesn't announce itself with fanfare, yet changes the shape of your days. At first, you might not even notice it. You simply find yourself thinking of someone, and they call. You step into a cafe you've never been to, and the person you've been meaning to meet for months is there. You speak a truth out loud, and within days, the resources to act on it appear. People call it coincidence, luck, or fate, but when you're truly aligned, you recognize it for what it is, the outer world mirroring the coherence of your inner world. Synchronicity is not magic in the way most people imagine. It's not about bending the universe to your will. It is about living so deeply in your truth that life has no choice but to respond in kind. When you are scattered inside, when your desires pull one way, your beliefs pull another, and your actions contradict them, both the signals you send out are fragmented. The world reflects that fragmentation back to you: mixed opportunities, false starts, connections that fizzle. But when your heart, mind, and actions move as one, the signal becomes clear, and a clear signal draws clear responses. This is why synchronicity feels so seamless. It's not because something out there is suddenly working harder for you. It's because the static between you and the life you want has fallen silent. You've stopped sending conflicting messages. You've stopped chasing from fear or shrinking from doubt. You've begun to act from a place where what you want and who you are no longer at odds. I've noticed that the most profound synchronicities rarely arrive in dramatic packaging. They often slip in through the ordinary moments. A conversation in passing that contains exactly the phrase you needed to hear. A book falling open to the page that answers the question you didn't know how to ask. The timing of a delay that frustrates you in the moment, but later reveals itself as perfect. Living in synchronicity does not mean everything becomes easy. It means everything becomes meaningful. Even the challenges carry a strange sense of rightness, as if they, too, are part of the unfolding. Placed there not to block you, but to guide you more precisely toward where you're meant to be. You begin to trust delays instead of cursing them. You see closed doors as redirection rather than rejection. This trust is what allows synchronicity to grow. Doubt is like static on a radio. It interferes with the signal. The more you second guess, the harder it is to notice the subtle invitations life is sending your way. But when you begin to expect harmony, not in a demanding way, but in the quiet certainty of someone who knows the river will keep flowing, you start to notice patterns forming. It's important to say synchronicity is not a reward for being good or spiritual. It's not a prize you win by meditating enough or thinking the right thoughts. It is simply the natural rhythm of life when you stop resisting it. The river has always been flowing. Synchronicity is what happens when you stop trying to paddle upstream. And here's the most beautiful part: when you live in alignment and allow synchronicity to guide you, you realize it's not just about getting what you want. It's about becoming more deeply woven into the living fabric of the world. You stop seeing yourself as separate from the events around you. That stranger who helps you lift a heavy box is not just a helper. They are part of the same choreography that placed you in each other's path. The opportunity that arrives just in time is not random. It is the echo of the choices you made weeks, months, or even years ago. Over time, you begin to play with it, not in a controlling way, but with curiosity. You wonder, if I move from joy today, what will meet me out there? You test what happens when you speak from your heart instead of your fear, and you watch the responses change. You notice that the more you follow the smallest nudges, the impulse to turn left instead of right, to stay 5 minutes longer at the party, the more often you end up exactly where you needed to be. I've found that synchronicity also teaches humility. Sometimes you think you know where a thread is leading, only to discover it has nothing to do with what you expected. A conversation you believed was about business opens the door to a deep friendship. A chance meeting you thought was fleeting turns into a lifelong collaboration. A disappointment you thought was the end of a chapter reveals itself as the perfect opening for a better one. In those moments, you understand that synchronicity is not just the universe saying yes to your plans. It's the universe inviting you into a plan larger than your own. And the more you accept that invitation, the more your life stops feeling like a series of disconnected events and starts feeling like a single, unfolding story, one where even the smallest details are connected by an invisible thread. So, when those coincidences appear, pause. Notice the feeling in your chest, the quiet sense that something is clicking into place. Let yourself smile at the precision of it. And then, keep moving from that place of harmony inside you, knowing that as long as you stay true to it, the path ahead will keep arranging itself, not perfectly, but perfectly enough, because in the end, synchronicity isn't about bending life to your will. It's about living so openly, so honestly, that life can finally reach you without obstruction. And when it does, you realize it was never random at all. It was always the mirror of your own alignment, reflecting back the truth you've been carrying all along. 12. The soul's compass. In a world that rarely stops speaking, choosing silence is an act of quiet rebellion. We live surrounded by noise, constant information, opinions layered upon opinions, the urgent hum of what others think you should do, to be, or want. Yet beneath all that, there is a deeper voice. It does not shout. It does not compete. It waits. And when you finally make space for it, you realize it has been there all along, patient and unwavering, like a lighthouse that never turns off. Even in the darkest weather, intuition is not a mystery reserved for the gifted or the mystical. It is the natural language of the soul. Long before you could speak words, you could feel the truth of things. You knew when something was safe, when someone was kind, when a path was calling you forward. The trouble is not that we lose intuition as we grow older. It's that we learn to drown it out. We trade it for logic that often serves fear, for rules that belong to someone else's life, for approval that costs us our own alignment. To live guided by intuition is not to reject reason. It is to invite a deeper wisdom into the conversation. Reason can calculate probabilities. Intuition feels possibilities. Reason can help you navigate the map. Intuition tells you whether the destination is truly yours. Without one, you risk getting lost in endless detours. Without the other, you risk walking in the wrong direction. With perfect efficiency, following your intuition often means making choices that are invisible to everyone else. From the outside, they may look illogical or even reckless. You might say no to an opportunity others would kill for, because something in your bones says it's not right for you. You might leave a comfortable place for a future you can't yet explain. You might choose to pause when the world is screaming for you to go faster. And yet, every time you honor that inner compass, you strengthen it. I have learned that intuition speaks in many forms. Sometimes, it's a sudden knowing, a clarity that arrives whole and complete, without evidence. Other times, it's a whisper that asks you to slow down, to wait, to look again. It can appear as a tightness in your chest when you're about to compromise yourself, or a lightness in your step when you're moving toward what's true. It can speak through dreams, through patterns you can't unsee, through the quiet pull of something you can't quite name. And here's the thing, intuition is not always comfortable. It will not flatter your ego or promise you the easiest route. Sometimes, it will lead you straight into the very thing you hope to avoid, not to harm you, but because it knows that the only way out is through. It knows which storms will strip away what no longer serves you, and which mountains will give you the view you need to see your life differently. In my own life, the moments I've ignored intuition have always left a trace. Looking back, I can see the signs I brushed aside, the restlessness I called impatience, the unease I blamed on stress, the repeated patterns I pretended were coincidences. Ignoring intuition doesn't silence it. It simply waits for the next chance to speak. And if you keep turning away, life will eventually raise the volume, sometimes in ways that feel like loss or upheaval, until you can no longer pretend you don't hear. Trusting your intuition requires a willingness to live without immediate proof. It means letting go of the need for constant validation, because the voice you're listening to is not seeking permission. It's guiding you toward a life that will, in time, make sense from the inside out. It means accepting that not everyone will understand your choices, and that's okay. You are not here to live someone else's alignment. Silence is the soil where intuition grows strongest. In stillness, you can hear the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of knowing. Fear rushes. Intuition is patient. Fear demands you act now or lose everything. Intuition is content to wait for the right moment. Fear shrinks your world. Intuition expands it. That's how you know which is speaking. When you follow intuition long enough, you begin to see the invisible threads it weaves through your life. That job you didn't take leaves space for the project that changes your direction entirely. That person you felt drawn to meet becomes a lifelong ally. That sudden urge to go somewhere, to be somewhere, places you exactly in the path of what you didn't even know you needed. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: the more you live by your intuition, the less you feel the need to control every detail. You stop gripping so tightly to your plans. You allow for detours, because you trust that your compass will keep guiding you. Even when the path disappears beneath your feet, you understand that you can't miss what's meant for you, as long as you keep listening and moving in its direction. So, in a world that measures worth by speed and volume, dare to be the one who slows down. Dare to turn down the noise long enough to feel the subtle pull of your own soul. Dare to follow it, even when the road ahead is invisible to everyone else. Because that compass is not pointing you toward a place, it's pointing you toward yourself. And when you arrive there, you will see that the journey was never about finding the right path. It was about becoming the kind of person who can walk it with trust, with presence, and with a quiet joy that no amount of noise can take away. You have always been chosen. You have always been chosen, not because someone outside of you decided you were worthy, not because life finally deemed you ready, but because the truth of who you are is inseparable from the creative power itself. It has never been a question of permission. It has never been a matter of proving yourself. Long before the world told you what you could or could not be, you were already carrying the essence of everything you would ever need. Every season of your life, every challenge, every joy, every heartbreak has been a golden thread in the tapestry of your becoming. Some threads are vibrant, woven in moments of laughter and success. Others are darker, born from loss, confusion, and nights you thought would never end. Yet together, they create a pattern that is uniquely yours, one that could not exist without both the light and the shadow. Without the winters, you would never recognize the spring. Without the storms, you would not appreciate the calm. You see, being chosen does not mean life will shield you from difficulty. It means that even in difficulty, you are not abandoned. It means there is meaning in every turn, even when the meaning is not immediately visible. You were not sent here to collect a perfect series of victories. You were sent here to live fully, to grow through every texture of human experience, and to let your soul shine through it all. From this day forward, you can walk differently, not as someone trying to arrive, but as someone who understands they have always been exactly where they are meant to be. Right place, right time, not because of luck, but because life itself moves with you, adjusting, aligning, opening paths in ways you could never orchestrate alone. There is a quiet confidence that comes when you live as if you are already enough. You stop grasping for validation and start offering your presence as a gift. You stop seeing the future as a distant goal to chase and start seeing it as something you are already creating in every breath, every choice, every step. And here's the truth: every choice you make from love is a declaration. It is the soul's way of saying, I have been chosen. I am choosing back. Each time you act from that place, you shift the world around you, not through force, but through resonance. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. Life feels it. The world responds, not just by giving you what you once dreamed of, but by allowing you to become the dream itself. When you live from this knowing, you begin to see the quiet choreography of it all the way. A conversation finds you at the exact moment you need it. The way a closed door redirects you towards something far better. The way your presence opens hearts without you even trying. You realize that your worth was never conditional, never dependent on performance, never earned. It was always the ground you stood on. And perhaps the most profound part is this: when you finally stop waiting to be chosen, you begin to see that you have the power to choose yourself, again and again, in every circumstance, to choose trust over fear, to choose love over resentment, to choose presence over distraction, to choose the truth of your being over the noise of the world. So, let today be the moment you remember, not the moment you became worthy. You have never been anything less, but the moment you decided to live from that worth, to let it shape your steps, your voice, your vision, the moment you understood that life is not a test you pass, but a canvas you are meant to paint with the colors of your soul. And as you walk forward, know this: you do not need to wait for the stars to align. They align because you move. You do not need to wait for permission. You carry it within you. You do not need to become someone else. You need only remember who you already are. Every breath, every choice, every act of love is both the proof and the practice of being chosen. And from this truth, the world rearranges itself, not simply to deliver your dreams, but to let you stand in the center of them, alive, awake, and unshakably yourself. You have been, you are, and you will always be chosen. Now live like it.